Welcome to Masters at Work. Today is a little different. A lot of you know Dave Foy as the guy asking the questions, leading the conversations, and creating one of the most respected platforms in fixed ops. But this time, I wanted to turn the mic around because behind Fixed Ops Mastermind, behind the podcast, behind the AI conversation, there's a man who spent decades inside the real work. Technician, advisor, fixed ops leader, someone who built his voice from experience, not distance. And I think that is exactly why so many people in the industry trust him. So today, this is not just a conversation about fixed ops. It's a conversation about Dave's journey. What shaped him, what he believes is broken, what he sees coming, and what it really means to leave the industry better than you found it. Welcome, Dave Foy, to the Masters at Work podcast. Dave, I've been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. And I told you that the Dos Equis man, right? Basically, the coolest man in the world. I have a list of 10 guys like that I want to talk to. You were on the top 10, like I said. So this is the reason we're having this conversation.
I'm honored to hear that. I don't know if I can if I can actually hit the coolest or most interesting man in the world status, but I'll do my best for you, man.
That's the humility part of you that we all love. You know that. You know, your son. I always say something about my father taught me that. He said, "Son, when you grow up, you need to behave properly." Because a father is judged by the way his son behave. And I'm like, fair. I met your son at NADA. That's why I say you're a Dos Equis man. What a gentleman. Great kid. He's on the right track, helping you, working with you in the business, which is really something interesting.
Yeah, he is. It's special to be able to do that and share that with him. And we're making the trip down to the MIT Museum where the Automotive AI Summit's going to happen to take another walk through there to, make sure that we have the coverage done properly there. So it's really cool to be able to spend that time with him. Before he got his license, I used to drive him everywhere to go do his video gigs. We drove down to New Jersey. I've driven up into Maine. We spent a lot of time in the car together getting to different video gigs before he had a license.
Oh, that's awesome. So, you've always been the guy who's asking the questions. And how does it feel to be on the other side of the microphone today?
Well, I'll tell you, it's always interesting for me to be on the other side of the microphone. I recorded an episode of Mobile Service Monday with Jeremy Stevens, my co-host Jeremy Stevens, but he was operating the StreamYard yesterday, not me. And it was interesting for me to have to just sit there and interact and not actually be the guy who had to, control buttons and sound and everything else. So,
when I was preparing for this, I wanted to make this more of a personal journey of Dave Foy. I mean, everybody knows Dave in the community, but there's a story behind the man, and that's kind of like what I want to focus on today to get people to know you at that level. I've had that privilege of meeting you in person and talking other stuff other than business, and I think this is the part that I want other people to discover. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I'm an open book.
That's what you said. I remember when we were preparing for this, you say, man, I just wing it. I don't need to prepare or any of those type of things going on. And I was like, okay, let's go. So before the platform, the audience, tell us a little bit about the early version of Dave Foy. What does that look like? The journey. How did it start? Where did it start? And
So my start in automotive, we got to go in the Wayback Machine to 1987, when I was graduating high school. I was enrolled in a program for college that at the time was called computer maintenance technology. And it was a program that would teach you how to repair computers, right? Which were not the computers we have today. They were, those big giant mainframes taking up a room. And it intrigued me being able to get into the machine that could do all that stuff and be able to understand how to repair that. My dad worked at the college that this program was at, and knowing that I was not a stellar student in high school, it's not. I am not the person who does well in that type of environment. Said to me, "Hey, there's a lot of math in that program. Maybe it's not the right field for you to go into." Having the utmost faith in his son that he would succeed, right? And but there was a new program coming to that college called the Ford Asset Program, and he said, "It seems really cool. It's the first year that they're doing it. Just they're putting on a seminar or whatever. Just go and see what it's about." I went to the college. The next week, 2 weeks later, whenever it was, there were me and 7 other people around a little table with a slideshow presentation that Ford gave. Showed these technicians in white lab coats working on computers to diagnose a car, and then you were going to pass that car off to the mechanic to fix the car, right? So I was like, this is cool. This blends computers and cars, 2 things I'm interested in. Let's do it. So I switched over to that program, and that is how I wound up inside Automotive. You find out pretty quickly when you get to the dealership, there is no white lab coat. There is no person standing there diagnosing a car and passing it off to somebody to get it repaired. And the techs in that first dealership that I worked at were quick to let me know that. But it's worked out okay. I've done okay in Automotive over the years.
So you started as what? As a technician, and then kind of like build your way through. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. I started as a tech for Ford. So the way that program worked is it was a 2-year program, but it was 9 weeks at the college and then 9 weeks at the dealership. So it was 2 years straight. There was no spring break. There was no summer break. It was, you were either working at the dealership or you were at the college taking classes. At the end of the 2 years, you graduated with an associate's degree in applied science, and had a job at the dealership because you spent the 9 weeks working. They paired you with a dealership. So you were at that same dealership every 9 weeks you were there. So they got to know you. You got to show them what you could do and all of that. Turns out, Sandy, I'm not a very good technician. And I lasted about 4 years working on cars. And I joke that Ford asked me not to work on their cars anymore. It's not really the way that it happened, but it's close enough. And I moved over to a service advisor role and absolutely fell in love with that piece of the business after being a tech for 4 years.
So let me ask you this then. What did you not like about the technician role? I mean, I love to tinker with my equipment all the time. I got tractors, excavators. I'm the guy. Actually, when the mechanics come, they're like, "Get out of the way." I'm like, "Come on, man, let me help you out." So tell me, what's the deal?
So it wasn't actually that I didn't like anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was not very good at being in it. The interesting story about that is moving back to the service advisor position and talking to customers about what was happening with their cars. I was able to give technicians way better insights into what might be going on with the car. And as the technician was working on the car, it was much easier for me to come from this view out here and say, hey, maybe it could be this thing, right? But when I was in it, I was too closed in, and I couldn't figure out what problems were. I had trouble diagnosing things. But when I stepped back into that advisor role, it was odd how it opened up that 10,000-foot view that people talk about executives taking of their company, right? That CEO look of a company. For me, that was the advisor role. That was me being able to step back, understanding what questions to ask a customer, blending that with being able to talk customer language and transfer that into technician language, right? But not talking technician language to customers that they don't understand, that we love to do in automotive. We love our acronyms. And that, so your original question was what I didn't like. It wasn't that I didn't like anything about being a technician. I enjoyed it. I was not good at it. I struggled doing that. I struggled diagnosing problems with cars. That's really what drove me to have to move to the service advisor side of things.
Interesting. But there's a part here that I kind of like. I think is your superpower. I'll tell you a quick little story. I come from an engineering background, so I was a Silicon Valley engineer. I built during the time when the internet was becoming very, very popular. I helped build the backend infrastructure. So there's a company called Cisco Systems.
Yep.
And Cisco had this program called a CCIE program. It's called a Certified Cisco Internetwork Engineer. And I was one of the few. There was only 1,000 of us in the world that was certified to do that. So I was one of those guys. And we would travel all over the world to build networking, pretty much the internet back in the day. I did a lot of e-commerce infrastructure. If you ever buy a ticket on American Airlines, for example, I was the guy, the architect who designed the back-end infrastructure for that company. And I understand as of today, that infrastructure still remains because it's the core, the backbone, right?
Wow.
But I met a gentleman, his name is John Shapudis from St. Louis. He was my CEO at the first company that I worked for that got bought by Verizon. And he always used to tease me. I mean, he calls me his brown brother, right? That's kind of like what he calls me. He's like, brown brother, what you gonna do when you grow up? That's what he said to me. And I'm like, man, I'm an engineer, I'm an architect. I'm pretty talented at what I do. Everybody says it. And I think I'm gonna do just fine. He goes, no. You have that ability to communicate this complexity of technology, of bits and bytes, of IP addresses and all that stuff into simple language. I love to have you on my sales call. When you were telling that story about you, basically, my wife called it the mountaintop perspective. You called it the 10,000-foot view. When you step out of it, you were able to see the problem better and then clearly communicate the problem to a technician, and probably very good at talking to the customer, knowing what you are, right? That's kind of like where many people lack these type of abilities. Would you agree? You're either techie or you are the typical sales guy, But the combination of being able to take technology, mechanical stuff and combine that and speak with a human being. Tell us a little bit more about that aspect, that superpower of Dave Foy.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And look, as I moved on in my career and moved into managing stores and people, the ability to communicate with a customer is so much more important than the technical knowledge. Does the technical knowledge help you communicate in automotive from a service advisor standpoint? Absolutely, because that customer doesn't understand anything that's going on with their car. As an aside, they don't need to. They don't need to understand exactly how a brake system operates, right? But you as an advisor need to have some understanding of how that brake system operates so that you can explain to the customer why they need brakes other than just the technician said, right? And so being able to bridge those two and look, I spent 10 years as a service advisor. I didn't spend a year or months. I spent 10 years as a service advisor before I moved into a management role. So I know that job intimately. And when I listen to people talk about advisors now and what they should be doing and shouldn't be doing, and I understand what they're going through. And look, I had a lot less things on my plate in the 90s than advisors have in the 2025s or 2020s rather. There's a lot more stuff going on that an advisor has to focus on and pay attention to. But the one thing that always will remain a constant is being able to communicate with that customer. And it's just a super, super important factor. If somebody was going to ask me the one thing that they should focus on to succeed in life in general, it's the ability to communicate with people. And the ability to, look, the word authenticity likes to get tossed around a lot, right? And I used to tell my team, I don't need you to think of your authentic self always being here, because look, my authentic self is somebody who can go from 0 to spinning out of control really quickly, right? But you can't do that when you're working, right? But my authentic self at work has the ability to control that, and the ability to communicate better, and the ability to see things more clearly. That doesn't make me inauthentic if somebody sees me outside of work and I maybe act a little bit different. And I think people get that wrong about authenticity. So what I have always told the teams that I worked with is, I need you to be authentic to the person that you are right now in this dealership as a service advisor, as the trusted advisor of that customer standing in front of you, that person that you're looking in the eye, right? And if that's a single mom of 3 who needs to understand what's important to do today on her vehicle, what can wait till next month, next 6 months to do, and what can wait forever, then I need you to be authentic to that person. And I went off on a tangent there, but authenticity, I think, gets murky and misunderstood. And I think people think that just means that whatever comes into their head, they should be able to say, and that's them being their authentic selves. And that does not lend itself to real conversation with people.
No, I think that's a very good point. I think so. To be a good advisor is, what I'm hearing is, emotional intelligence, the ability to regulate what comes out of your mouth.
Yep.
What you want to say versus what you should say is critical, right, to the customer.
Yes, absolutely. And so I'll give you an example. When I was first an advisor, there would be customers that would come in, and they would come in with their book of everything they've had done on their car, right? And they're carrying in the recall notice that got sent to them in the mail. And they're bringing all this stuff into them, and they're like, here's what I'm here for today. Here's the last time I did an oil change. Here's the last time I did the air filter, the last time the tires were rotated. Here's this recall bulletin. I have it all here for you. And early in my career, I would be like, I don't need any of that. I have the computer to show me the history of the vehicle. I know the last time you did an oil change, and I have to go run it through Ford anyways to see what your recall is. So you can keep all that. And they would be like almost stunned, but I have to give you all this. It says, the recall bulletin says, bring to your dealer, right? And I would be like, I don't need it. I say, I'll take it if you want. I can literally remember times telling customers, I'll take it if you want, but I'm just going to throw it away. We don't need it, right? As you move on in your career, you realize that's just a type of person, right? That's a very analytical person. And you as an engineer are probably that type of person, right? Where you document everything, right? I'm a very loose documenter. But what I realized after a little while is that when that person comes in, I, not being inauthentic to myself, but I change the way I communicate with them and go, thank you so much for bringing this in. This is great information for me to have. I really appreciate that. This is really good. Glad you paid attention to the notice that said bring it in. This is great. And if I take the stuff and I throw it in the trash afterwards, who cares, right? I made the connection with that customer, right? That customer is now looking at me as their trusted advisor. And you realize that there's a few different types of people, depending on how you want to classify people. Carl Jung classified them into 4 classifications. You figure out what the type of person is, and then you work yourself to that personality. And it makes communication way easier with customers.
So what are those 4 classifications you've come up with? Tell us.
Oh, man, you're going to ask me that question. There's an analytical, an amiable. Oh, my word, I'm going to have to go look them up for you now. There's four types of people. There's even another book that is I don't think I have it in here, but it's personality styles at work.
All right.
It literally talks about those four personality styles and how to deal with them in your work environment.
Yep. Look, I'm a study of the people. I love human psychology, and that's my minor actually from college. So I've always this is why I ended up on the business side, right? Mm-hmm. And I think to your point, I think that was such an important thing that you said when you say, I might not need what this person brought to me, but to them, it was so important that they kept it. Probably this is like a life saving that was invested into that vehicle. It's so important to them, right? It's like a child. And when you kind of like go, I don't need this, probably go, they are feeling, but acknowledging that and making them say, hey, this was great that you brought it. Turn around, you throw it in the garbage can. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
But it's how you make them feel, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was a huge change for me because that went from those type of customers coming in and that being a confrontation to now those customers coming in going, I want to talk to Dave because he's gonna take all my information and look through it and understand what's going on with my vehicle. Right? It's that's the connection that you need to make with people.
So do you see advisors today have that type of skill set, or are the dealers training them in this type of skill that helps them? Because, there's always sales training, that technical training, but the psychology training about how to, do you see that happening in the industry?
There is not enough of that type of training that goes into a service advisor. And Sandy, look, we were poor back then, and we're still poor in training most of our staff, but your advisors who deal with more customers than anybody else in that entire dealership, day after day after day, we give very little training to as far as how to communicate with the customer, right? We may teach them about the brake system. We may teach them about how to pair a phone so they can help a customer do that, right? We teach them how to, I'll use a negative word that I don't like, how to upsell a customer to do certain repairs or maintenance or whatever, right? We'll train them on all that stuff. If we just train them on how to communicate with the customers, all of that stuff becomes secondary and becomes easy because you're having a real conversation with somebody. And look, sales is not a bad word, right? And service advisors are salespeople. Every one of us is selling something every single day of our lives, whether that is if you're single, you're trying to sell yourself to a potential mate. If you're married, you're trying to sell your idea of what to watch on TV to your mate, right? We are all trying to sell something every single day. It's not a bad word, but it's all about communication. And that we just do not spend enough time working. I don't even want to say educating, because it's more than education. It needs to become second nature. It needs to become the words you mentioned, the EQ, the emotional quotient. That we need to increase in people. And that's the reason that if you find somebody who's great at customer service, you go to your local Starbucks or the grocery store, and somebody is great at customer service, great at communicating with you, those are the people you want to grab to bring into your store to be a service advisor. But I'll tell you the reason that it doesn't happen is because most people go, they don't know anything about doing this. They don't know how to be a service advisor. They don't know how to operate CDK, Reynolds, Techion, any of the DMSs. There's so much work in trying to train this person and get them up to speed, right? And I can't just say, go stand next to Dave and watch what he does for a couple of weeks and then they'll be ready to go. And that's why we don't bring them into the industry, is because it takes too much work. Or worse, we bring them into the industry, we don't give them the training they need, and they leave, and they'll never come back to the industry because they go, I went there and they just got mad at me for not knowing stuff, right?
So there's some industry knowledge. If you combine that with the ability to of emotional intelligence, how to talk to people, that could take us service advisors a long way into that business. Agree?
It sure could. Sure could. And the great part about this industry, and it's a double-edged sword, Sandy. You can get into this industry with zero education, like not even a high school diploma, and you can go to the highest level of all the way to owning stores. I worked at a 6-store group that was owned by a guy who used to be a technician at one of the stores at one time. Okay? You can go from the bottom rung of the ladder to the guy signing the checks in this industry. There's not a lot of industries that you can say that about. The problem that creates is there are a lot of people who got into this business without education and now look at it and go, I didn't need it to get this far. Why would I need it to continue on and go further, right? And it creates that weird dichotomy where they realize they've been pretty successful and they feel like they should be able to be more successful without more education. And that rarely works. You need that constant improvement, that constant education in your life to be able to continue on. And that's a problem that we run into in this business. We bring in an advisor who didn't have a lot of education. They turn into an unbelievable advisor making 6+ figures a year, and they want to progress, but they don't have, they haven't been invested in to get more education, and they don't necessarily feel or understand that they need more education to progress further because they get into the business with no education.
You know, Richard Lupo has this tagline I associated with him, and his tagline is innovate or evaporate. I think it's such a fitting thing what you're just saying. But, you know, your point here, I understand. If a sales guy is listening to this is the first objection you have in sales. People don't want change. It's human nature. We like to be comfortable, sit on the couch, predictable, where my underwear is, where my shirts are. You know, if my wife moves it around, I get like panicky. What did you do? Because you see, it's human nature to be always reluctant because our brain doesn't want to think more than it needs to. It wants to protect itself to continue living.
Yeah.
I think to your point, if you've built something in a way, you might have struggle, but you got good at it. Now you're like, I'm not changing because change takes too much energy, right?
Yes, absolutely. Our brains have evolved to protect us and to save as much energy as they possibly can, right? And it saves energy by having things be repetitive and be easy, if you will. And that's the reason that we start to not want things to change. Sometimes even positive change. It's just they resist positive change just because it is change.
Yeah. We are always resistant to change. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, let me ask you, when we compare this time, right, from the early years, right, what compared to today? Because I know you are always traveling and talking to people. What does the people today outside of Fixed Ops still do not understand about the business? And you look at the GM, it has his own perspective. Yeah. You look at the COO or the owner, everybody. But there's something unique about fixed operation. And it became very dear to me because most of the friends that I've made in the space are in Fixed Ops. The Dwayne Kinsley of the world, the Richard Lupo, etc. So tell me, what do you think people still do not understand about fixed operation that continues to be a fallacy today in the industry?
So I'm going to give you a twofold answer to that. One is what we've been talking about, which is that the ability to communicate with people is absolutely key. And two, that fixed operations is unbelievably complicated to put together every single day. And I'll be perfectly honest. I did not realize this until I was outside of the dealerships looking back in at all the pieces that have to fall into place every single day to make a day work, to make a week work, a month work. There are a lot of moving pieces that are going on every single day, and it's constant task switching is the other part of that, right? So you're working through a problem of helping a tech with a problem. You're helping an advisor talk to a customer. You're jumping out in the service drive and putting paper mats in the cars as they drive in. Like, there's so many different things that you're doing. That task switching is really mentally taxing, and it's a very complicated department to work and to work well. And the ones that get it right have found a way to minimize that task switching for not just their leadership, but for everybody else in the line, from their porters to their advisors to their techs. They have minimal task switching, which allows for the majority of their brain power to go to the task at hand rather than jumping task to task to task to task.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of respect for fixed op directors in the space, to be honest with you. You remember when we were at NADA, I spent pretty much 2 days with Dwayne and a few other people, mm-hmm. and his phone doesn't stop ringing. You know, it just, and he's very good at managing it, right? He's talking to you right now. He switches and gives a couple of answers to his people, service advisors calling him or service managers. Then he goes back. I mean, what a crazy life, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it does never stop. And look, I've worked at stores that were open 7 days a week. We used to joke that Sunday was a half day because we were only open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. instead of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. like the rest of the week. And that just means that on your days off, you're still answering questions. The business is still running. There are still customers coming in, technicians, parts problems, that even on your day off, you're working. And even if it isn't a 7-day-a-week operation, you're thinking of things that you're outside of work and you're going, oh man, I forgot to check on this. And now you're outside of work and you need to remember something for when you get back into work the next day. It's an all-encompassing job.
Never ends.
Never ends.
So here's something a little bit more personal. And I know you're a humble guy, so you're going to say no to me, but it's the fact. I'm going to state facts here. You're widely respected in this business. Everybody I talk to, whenever they saw that interview we did at an ADA, oh, you know Dave? I'm like, well, I know Dave, yes. He's a great guy. We spend, I'm getting to know him more and more, but everybody speaks very, very highly of you. Why do you think people trust you in this business that sometimes can be pretty skeptical?
So let me start out that by saying, number one, I am humbled to hear that, and that does make this a more difficult question to answer, and I'll start this answer out by saying I have made a lot of mistakes in this business. I have there are a lot of people that respect me in this business. There are a lot of people that earlier in my career I probably didn't treat as well as I should have, as I learned and understood how to better treat people. And certainly this is a separate subject, but certainly as I came to terms with the fact that I had an alcohol addiction and dealt with that, it really changes the way that you deal with people. For my current self, I feel the reason that they respect me is because I am me, and I speak my mind, not in a disrespectful way, but I am not the person that's just going to jump on the train and go for the ride because X influencer is driving the train. That is not the person that I am. If I think something is not right, I'm gonna say it. If I think that a product is not working well, I'm going to say that. That is the reason that the mastermind has stayed a smaller business than what it maybe could be, because of that respect factor. I'm selective about the people that I work with, and I think that is what gives me some respect in this industry. Also, the fact that you can't take away that I spent 30 plus years running stores and doing that successfully. So I have an actual knowledge of what they're going through, right? So I'm not somebody from outside the industry who's trying to tell them how to run a store. I have been there. I've lived the pain day in and day out with them. And I think that certainly plays a factor in the fact that my voice can be heard.
No, this is good. I think you have. I wrote the formula, the Dave Foy formula. When you say transparency, I speak my mind. I tell you things just the way it is. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't get influenced. But the way I tell you that is with respectful communication and a lot of emotional intelligence that understand the psychology about how humans think. There we go. Trust is built. There you go. Young people out there listening, you want to build trust? We could write a book about the whole thing you just said right now. Hey, when did you realize Fixed Ops Mastermind was becoming more than a show and turning into, I call it a real signal into the industry? I'll tell you, when I first started in the automotive space, that's where I spent my time on learning, listening, figuring out what are these guys talking about? What are the challenges? So when did you realize that? And I want to know a little bit more about when did you decide to start it as well? If you could tell us the history and what was the idea behind it. So educate us.
Yeah. So June of 2019 was the very first episode, if you will, of Fixed Ops Mastermind. And I'll tell you that my vision for what it was going to be compared to what it actually turned out to be is vastly different. My original vision was to going back to talking about advisors not getting the education that they need. I wanted the Fixed Ops Mastermind to be that platform where leaders could get on there and talk with advisors and technicians who wanted to understand what they needed to know to move up in the business, right? So for those that actually wanted to move into a management position, this would be a forum where they could get on every single week, talk to leaders who are doing it successfully, and learn what they needed to learn to move up in the business. Now, as I put that out there, and the only people that signed up to attend the events were all the leaders. The advisors and technicians didn't sign up for the program. And so it turned into much. Now, over the years, we've had technicians that join in the discussions. We've had plenty of service advisors that have joined the discussions, but it is still largely a leadership forum. And it kind of evolved into that. Now, June of 2019, if we go into the Wayback Machine, a few months after that, 7 months after that, COVID started, right? And we went into lockdown. When I started this in June, I had to explain to people what Zoom was and how to get onto it and how to turn their camera on so I could see them and all of that stuff, right? Come early in 2020, it was the only way to meet with people.
True.
Right. And so it turned out that it was the right medium at the right time. And that is when it started to grow a little more. I was still running stores. That was the original reason behind it being a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time, because I had to have time to get back home from the store and get the call set up. before we went on live. And it grew from there, and continued the momentum. Sorry, had trouble with that word. The momentum after COVID went away and after people started that's still happening now in 2026. You're getting more back into in-person events. But this is it's a live Zoom call every week, and it's funny, Sandy. Sometimes it still takes people by surprise when they hear the guest that's going to be there, and they jump in thinking they're just going to watch this, or they're watching a podcast, and they're in a Zoom call. Like it's interactive. You got a question for the guest, they raise a hand or they unmute their mic and they ask the guest. Right? It's as if you're sitting there having a real conversation with people. And that's something that I think has allowed it to remain a little different, right? There's podcast forums like this out there. I have the Fixed Ops Mastermind podcast where I have those one-on-one recorded conversations. But we also have that weekly live call where you can get on with other people in the industry and ask questions that you have. And what are you seeing out there? And you know, we talk about that. We have 2 rules on there. 1 is to be respectful of the other people that are there. And 2 is that you don't sell when you speak, right? So you have vendors, dealers, anybody is welcome. But we don't sell when we talk, right? So if you're a vendor, if you have a solution that will help somebody who's talking about something in there, you have that conversation as a sidebar with them. But in the discussion, you just lead with value. The same as if you were going to talk from an NADA stage, right? You don't sell from the stage. And so the fact that it's a live call and the fact that we don't sell on the call are the things that I feel make it different and are what make people want to engage more with the forum itself.
No, I think it's a great medium. I like the format, the way you're doing this. It's really, really cool. So when you started this in 2019, today I see there's a couple of other similar podcasts and all that stuff. I focus. We call our podcast the Operator's Lens. I'm a business guy. I've had exit of 3 companies, and I've never been in automotive. This is new for me. For the last year, I spent the time studying the market and understanding it. Mm-hmm. But what I did, many of the guys who I've worked with, they were getting pushed out of the business, whether it was in banking, whether it was in healthcare. Some of the key leaders that I had known when I was a young salesman, I became friend with them. They had a couple of years on me, and they were getting pushed out because companies were, trying to cut costs and all that stuff. Then what I wanted to do was to give these guys an opportunity to speak to people, share their experience, because they had so much to share. The gentleman that I know, he's one of my partners. His name is Rob Palacio. He spent 20 years at Texas Capital Bank. He took the bank from like a couple of $1 billion in asset size to over $30 billion in asset size. The guy used to work for the NSA. Smart guy, brilliant mind. And then guys like that are getting pushed out. You're like, come on. So the Operator's Lens was created to basically look at businesses in general, talk to leaders like yourself, the Lupos of the world, the GMs. I'm talking to JB Burnett in next week. He is another amazing general manager, executive GM that I'm looking forward to my conversation with. But that's kind of like what we do, give people a chance. But tell me, when you started in 2019, how many forum like yours existed back then? Because now I see there's a lot of different ones, and I can see it on my LinkedIn all the time.
Yeah, there were none.
There were none. That's what I figured.
I had no model to go by. I don't know exactly when Zoom was created, but Zoom was still a pretty new platform. And there was, listen, it was, I'll use the word scary to do it. I started in probably February of that year to start to have the idea and start to put things together and write some stuff down and how I wanted it to work. And it just got to the point where I had a few people that said, you just have to do it. It doesn't matter how many times you write down what you think is going to happen. You just have to do it. And so that's what we did. We took a few weeks to put some posts up on LinkedIn about the fact that we were doing it. Got some people to sign up to the Zoom link, and we jumped on and did it. And it looks way different. I have that original recording. It looks way different than it looks now in the way that we do the information. The fact that it's a Zoom call, it looks exactly the same. There is no fancy. This is about as fancy a studio as you get from me. It's a bookcase, right? It's very simple, and it's all the typical Zoom squares. People get on and we talk, or we have some guests. We've had some super cool, interesting guests over the years also who come in and speak to the audience.
That's very cool. Very cool. So we've come from Dave Foy, the computer engineer turned technician in automotive industry, from there to service advisor. Now we just covered a little bit there's two aspects to it. There is the entrepreneurial aspect to what you've done that many people could learn, right? You started in an industry that did not have those type of I don't know, lack of a better word, services or medium to communicate. You started and pioneered that. I think that's kind of interesting. But I think more importantly is your idea of giving back that I really appreciate to the technician, right? Giving them a voice to be able to share or learn from leaders' expectation, etc. That's a great journey.
Yeah, it's so. Look, and I've had people argue this with me, but you mentioned facts earlier, and to me this is a fact. A technician is the only person in a dealership that produces revenue. Every single other person in that dealership is an expense, and people can argue that fact and tell me that the general manager is not an expense, that the salespeople are not expenses. Everybody's an expense. Only the technician can generate revenue out of nothing, right? A car is going to get sold whether there's a salesman or a general manager there or not, right? And that's starting to become more and more apparent with the direct-to-customer type of platforms that are coming out, right? A car is not going to get fixed without a technician, period. Maybe 20 years down the road when they make robots good enough to be able to be dexterous enough to do the work on a car, maybe you can get it done without a technician. But right now, a technician is the only person who can take nothing and turn it into dollars inside a dealership. And those are the people we need to be pouring back into. Those are the people who need, and look, technicians get a lot of education on the technical side of stuff. They're probably the most educated people in most dealerships. But they don't get a lot of the other things that could help them progress in their career. You talked about guys being pushed out of banking and other industries. The same thing happens to technicians. Go and work on that hard concrete floor for 30 years, and their backs, their knees, their feet are shot. They can't stand up, but guess what they have? An unbelievable knowledge base in their head. And oftentimes we let them leave the industry because they're physically incapable of doing that revenue producing activity anymore, when we should be transitioning them, and we should have been all along preparing them to transition out from revenue producing technician to maybe they're the person who is bringing in the new technicians and getting them up to speed. Maybe they're the person who is a great service advisor. Maybe they're an unbelievable communicator. There are positions that we should be moving them into that we don't spend enough time. And that's one of the reasons that you have trouble bringing new people into this field, is because they look and who do they have to model? The guy who's been a tech for 30 years, who's telling them, I wouldn't do this for a career. Like, I've been doing this for 30 years and I can't walk anymore, but I'm only 52 years old, and what am I going to do now, right? Whereas if there was a career path that was laid out in front of them, that's a much more alluring thing to bring somebody into.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Hey, I want to shift subject for you. You ready?
Yeah.
Let's talk about this
Right.
AI thing.
What's AI?
Exactly. It's that thing that's going to replace. My friend was joking with me the other day. He said, "Are you worried about AI?" I'm like, man, I'm an opinion guy. I talk to people, I get their opinion, and I share mine. I don't think AI can replace me on that subject, right? They're going to always need a guy like me to say, hey, this is ugly, this is good, this is bad, right? So that's what I do best, right? So let's go back in terms of, you said the initiative for the summit is to educate dealerships in terms of the questions that they should be asking, right? To those AI providers around maybe value, around automation, efficiency, whatever that is. Tell us a little bit more about that, because I want to dig in a little bit more on the look. I'm a technologist, remember? So I've sold AI for a long time. This whole thing, when I look at the industry today, conversational AI is so cool, and there's like 20 vendors, and everybody's like, wow, this is amazing. This is old tech, at least in my world, right? This is how I got connected, by the way. 10 years ago, I met with an executive at Bridgestone, and I brought him conversational AI. That's how I started. 10 years later, I started my own company. I started working with that executive in the auto industry. So that's kind of like, you know what I mean? So tell me a little bit about that. I want to understand it from your perspective. What are you seeing? Also, I don't want to use the word trick, but what cloak and dagger thing is happening from an AI vendor perspective that is being pushed onto the dealers to say, you got to do this type of thing, when potentially, to your point, maybe these things cannot be changed in the industry. You know what I mean?
I do. And so the point of the Automotive AI Summit is, you're correct. It's to get the dealers some education so that they understand a bit more, maybe the top 3 questions that they should ask a vendor coming to them trying to sell them an AI solution. And you know, those questions will change depending on what it is that they're looking at. If it's somebody that's coming in looking to manage all the data inside the dealership, it's a different 3 questions than if it's somebody who's trying to bring in a voice AI solution, right? But right now, all the dealers have to go by is show me a dealer that this is working for, show me your demo of the product, right? And there are things that are happening through some of the vendors, right? As they build their products, that they're built on other things, right? You understand this. There's voice AI bots that are built on 11 Labs platform, right? But they're presented to the dealer as, we built this. And you didn't build it, right? And I'm not saying that the product is no good because of that, but it's misrepresented to the dealership, right? And those are things that the dealer needs to understand. They need to understand where their data is going. There's a lot of personal information inside a dealership, and to just have it going out to places they don't know, not understanding. They look, a dealer doesn't have to have deep understanding of AI and guardrails and safety standards and all that stuff. They don't understand that with the SaaS products that they've used for the last 20 years. They don't need to understand it with AI. They have to have some kind of understanding of what to ask a vendor to determine whether this truly is safe for them, whether it truly is a correct solution for them, right? There are companies in the data side that are maybe too much for dealer A. Maybe they're perfect for dealer C, but they're too much for dealer A, but they're trying to sell it to dealer A, and dealer A buys into it and maybe spends way more money than they need to, gets way more of a product than they really need, right? And that's unfair to the dealership. It's unfair to the customers of the dealership, because now their costs have gone up. So now what everything going out the door to a customer, costs now go up further. And so the summit has been designed to provide some of that information to the dealers, right? And yes, there are companies that are sponsoring the summit, and yes, they sell products to the dealerships, right? But every discussion I have with a sponsor or a potential sponsor revolves around that education to the dealership, right? And that is essential to making the Automotive AI Summit a little different than some other things out there. I'm not the rah guy. I'm not going to play loud music at the summit to make it different than what NADA is or what Digital Dealer is or anything else. I want it to be different in terms of what it actually delivers, and that is education to the dealership body. And through that education, and this is what's happened with the mastermind over the years, through that education, you get customers. There are people who have grown up, if you will, with their companies on Fixed Ops Mastermind that have never mentioned their company through the years on the mastermind, but they're there educating customers, and then that leads to conversations. And that's what dealers want to see. They don't want to hear a pitch. They don't want to sit through a pitch. They want you to educate them. And through that education, you get better trust with the dealer, which then allows you to sell to somebody, right? You can't sell to somebody who does not trust you. And you can't truly build that trust if you're not giving the dealer the real information about how your company is built or what it's built on.
You know, it's funny you say. Yesterday, I had this conversation exactly with an executive at the software company. When people are entering the dealership and they're trying to sell a solution, I think there's something that most software vendors are missing. They think that the dealership is always about solving this one problem.
Right.
No, it's not. If you have a tire solution, I can relate to that, and you're bringing a solution for sales and procurement for tires.
Yep.
The dealership has 1,000 problems. Tire is one of those problems. Might be a high problem, but they also have to worry about washing the car. They also have to worry about Uber transporting the people home. They have to make sure inventories. There's so many moving pieces. The dealership ecosystem is a very complex piece. If you are like so selfish to think that, my thing is the most important thing, is going to solve, you're not going to build credibility this way, right? Because that tells me you did not spend the time to learn about their business. You do not understand all the moving pieces. You think you're the most important piece. To your point, no education, no credibility, no sales. Fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's go back to one thing you said earlier, and I think that's important with these people claiming that they've built those AI type of thing, right?
Yep.
And then you mentioned something, you say there's a lot of personal data that's sitting inside of the dealership.
Yeah.
Just a couple of thoughts comes to mind. I mean, like I said, this is my industry, right? This is where I come from. I can tell you Lockheed Martin, for example, is not using public LLM for any kind of proprietary thing that they might be developing for government. They are using private model in LLM and neural network. Llama is one of them that comes to mind. Quen is another. ChatGPT or Claude is not something that they are using to build those things. Now, if it's a little customer support, I don't know, basic stuff, it's not a big deal to have these type of information on those, large language model. I use chat all the time. I use Claude all the time, right? Perplexity is another one that I use. But if I'm doing anything that's where there's confidential data, you're right. This is not the right place. If you expose this, you never know. I mean, we've seen many data leaks, right? About how, and you are right to educate the community on that. I think it's important that they need to understand all these vendors claiming when they're doing conversational AI or agentic AI, all those agents are just the front end. It's like a pretty picture, window dressing.
Yes.
The real back end is happening on those platforms that are already well established. Now, there's good and bad to that. If the platform is well established, it's going to be stable. You can depend on it. But those vendors claiming that it's theirs is a problem. The other issue I've had in the industry, and I don't know if I shared that with you, I was looking at data where they are stored in the dealership, where people don't really have control over that data because the vendor, the DMS system, they control that. But how did I come up to that? We were trying. I was talking to a software vendor who was trying to do an integration, and the vendor they are trying to integrate wants to charge them $100,000 to exchange inventory information. How many parts are there into that system? It's crazy. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's the one of the things that I look at, and you were talking about public models, and there are people who are out there telling dealers to just go build your own solution for something, right? Just go build. You can vibe code it. You can get on to Lovable, Cursor, Vercel, whatever it is, and you can just build something. You don't have to pay $5,000-$6,000 a month, right? But they don't tell them about all that stuff in the background, that all that security work that's not there because they vibe coded this stuff, right? And that's a danger. That's misinformation that's being given to the dealers. And I'm not saying that it's somebody being fraudulent or intentionally giving them information that could harm them. I think it's people that just don't understand like what they're doing by telling a dealer to go do that, right? And look, I build stuff on those platforms, but I don't build stuff that is gonna expose. When I see them telling them, look, you can build this and then download this report out of your DMS and just put it right into this thing, and it'll sort this and it'll find this and I'm like, oh my word, the information you just put out there in a public forum, you just exposed your customer data to some potential bad actions that are going to come back and get a dealership sued. And I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when this happens. And this is the same reason I take that and I assimilate that to vendors that are selling products to dealerships that are on other platforms that they're not divulging, right? Because you can have that same exposure, and a dealer may never know, may never understand that.
Yeah, no, this is crazy that people are being misguided this way. This is the thing. I mean, when I think about AI, for example, I wonder if there's plenty of vendors out there and the application of AI, LLM agents, have started in other industries. Mm-hmm. The dealership doesn't need to go reinvent the wheel, lack of a better term. Leverage what's already, just like you guys are, the guys are leveraging conversational AI today, kind of like coming up, big thing. You have I don't know how many vendors I saw that NDA that are about conversational AI.
Yep.
But conversational AI is not new. There's a company called Core AI that's been doing it for over a decade. There's a company called Amelia, which is IPsoft in New York. Chetan Dubey, the CEO of that company, I've known him for a long time. He's been building AI agents for a very, very long time. He applied it at companies like McKesson would have been using his product, way back before this was becoming mainstream. I don't think the way I look at what's the largest auto group? How many dealership do they have? 400, 500? Or because I know of the largest is 150. Tell me a little bit like the largest dealer group.
Yeah, I don't know exactly who number one is, but you take the Asburys, the Penske's, the Group Ones, those types of dealership groups, and those stores are maybe 300-400 stores, right? And they're the largest groups around, but there's 18,000 dealerships in the U.S., right? So even the largest groups are still pretty small compared to the overall number of dealerships.
You know what that would be like? You have 18,000 dealerships. You say, I need to go build my own car now. I'm not going to buy from Ford or GM anymore. Let me go build my own car and sell it because it's not the right business move, in my opinion. I think the industry, the dealership, the automotive industry can leverage what I call niche bending or skill bending or technology bending. Use what's already out there. To your point, understand the risk and the reward, understand the liabilities with it, figure out how you can bend it and use it into your industry. I don't think automotive space need to go reinvent it. It's already being done in insurance, in healthcare and banking and all that kind of good stuff. So,
absolutely.
That's kind of like the way I'm looking at it. I've listened to some of your conversation around AI, and I think you speak about it in a very different way than most people do, at least from what I saw, right? When did you realize it could actually help, like, for example, Fixed Ops, instead of just, adding to it problems or something like that? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, when did you see the value of it within your area of focus, which is fixed operations with advisors and all those type of things?
So when I first got out of the stores, I joined a startup tech company that was delivering training into stores using AI, and that was that was approximately 5 years ago. That was my first introduction to AI. Now, from what the founders viewed as how it was going to go and happen, it didn't end up going that way, but the picture that they painted of what it could do, what it was going to have the ability to do and deliver in training is what made me go, this is amazing, and here's how I think we can use it in this realm, and that I'm so thankful to have joined that company early on, because I got that look into AI early, long before ChatGPT became, the
mainstream
household name, right? Yeah, exactly. And it was really seeing it. It was seeing it before ChatGPT, right? So I didn't have that reference point of a lot of what a lot of people have now of they think of AI and they think of the chat box typing something into Claude or ChatGPT. I didn't have that reference point. And so I saw AI from the vantage point of what they described to me it could do and how it was going to evolve and all of that before I got the reference of ChatGPT. And that was super helpful to me because it allowed my mind to go to a different place with what AI could do. And then once ChatGPT came out and you could start to work with things, that just allowed me to take a little bit different path than what many in the industry have taken, who their first introduction was ChatGPT. No different than you and I who didn't grow up with one of these in our pocket, right? The idea of a phone is different still in my head than what it is to my son who grew up with this being a phone, right?
Yep.
Even kids my son's age, who's 20, are still saying hang the phone up, right? But when you don't actually hang up a cell phone, right? We used to hang up a regular phone. And so that's a little off topic, but it's to the point of it's that persistent thinking that carries through, of something that I knew before something newer came along. And so it's allowed me to take a little bit of a different track down the road on what I think AI can do for our industry.
Yeah, yeah. Just something to share. There's a product, it's free, on Google platform called Notebook LM.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with it, but if you're doing any private project at the dealership and you're running you don't want it to be public. If you own the Google suite, for example, put your data into Notebook LM. You can query it, with large amount of data. You can ask it question. I think that's kind of an interesting application for it. The problem is, going back to the advisor, there's the right tool for the right job. And what I'm seeing out there is the way AI is being used sometimes is just, I don't know. I question it. Like, I'll give you an example, right? And everybody complains about it. Like, we say, there's too many AI posts on LinkedIn or whatever, right? It's true. I wrote an article the other day about it. I wrote a post about it. I said, here's the thing. I don't think there's anything wrong to write with AI. Let's be honest. Don't be hypocrites. Yeah. This is what I'm saying. Yeah. Let's not be hypocrites here. It's very good to put your thoughts into AI and let it do the writing for you. But you cannot outsource your thinking to the AI. And that's what people are doing. That's wrong. When you outsource your thinking now, man, there's no thought leadership. Use your thought, put it in there, correct the AI, let it give you the right answer, and then you publish it. That would be something I would read. And when in a minute you read those posts who are saying, don't talk, all right, I'm tired of reading AI posts type of thing. You see all the emojis, and then you see the stacking. ChatGPT has a way to stack sentences, one after another. Yep. You're like, oh boy. Even the post that says don't write with AI is written with AI.
Here's the part nobody's talking about, right? They always like the AIs throw that in there. Sandy, I took years of LinkedIn writing and dumped it into the ChatGPT, right? And now I use Claude much more, but created those projects where I worked with it for hours to get it to understand my voice, to write like me, right? And now, because of that work, I can create posts, right, with my thinking, but my writing skills were never great. I'm a succinct person, and so I tend to write that way, right? Which created much shorter posts and not as much story in them. But using the AI with understanding how I write and how I think, even, if you will, to now create those posts. Like, I've never had anybody say Dave Foy's posts are written by AI, but I can tell you that it's very rare that I go in and type out an entire LinkedIn post, right? It's usually created by the AI. It's my ideas, and I go in and I probably type in 2 or 3 paragraphs about what my idea is, and then it puts it into a form that gets delivered, but that doesn't look like AI writing. And I want to go back to something that you said about Notebook LM, because last week on the Fixed Ops Mastermind, that is what we did. We did a class on Notebook LM on how to create a service advisor assistant.
That's very cool.
Because of that reason, that it's secure. It has guardrails. It is only going to go into the documents that you gave it to pull information out to give back to your advisor. And if you go in and you put in your policies and your procedures and your goodwill amounts and all of this kind of stuff, you can give your advisor something that they can query to get a quick answer for a customer when the manager is not available or the lead service advisor is not available. If we go all the way back to what we talked about earlier, you're bringing in a new advisor, it gives them much more confidence as they're learning their job, because they can ask the dumb question to the service advisor assistant instead of the actual service manager or the person training them to help them get some answers and get up to speed faster.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's a nail, we need a hammer. It's a nut, we need some sort of a wrench. It's about using the right tool to get the job done.
Yes.
You agree?
Yes.
And I think
absolutely.
Most of these vendors who are misguiding people about capabilities, about those promises, this is like human nature is crazy. Huh? We haven't changed much on the way we want to convince people. It's just, that's what I call it all the time when I hear it. You know, I write about manipulation in sales. You can't manipulate. In my industry, you can't manipulate an executive. If you did, you got lucky. You're out of that space. You'll have security walk you out very quickly. You never sell them anything else. So bottom line, in my industry, it's about insight. It's about building trust, like you said.
Yep.
It's about being an asset, being valuable.
Yes.
You know what was scary for most salespeople? You know, sales started, let's think Ray Kroc. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the McDonald movie where he would carry like this blender thing and go store to store, right?
Yeah.
I remember the first set of encyclopedia my father bought for me that kind of like, you know, I was born on a small island and beautiful life, beautiful place, but there was not a lot. It's not like you're in the United States or in Europe, right? You dream as a young kid and you get these encyclopedias. You go through those beautiful pictures and you learn so much. And I'm a young punk and I loved it. That's kind of like opened my mind. That guy carried it in the back of the trunk of his car and sold me like, I don't know how many books there were. But the day when customers are counting on the sales rep to come to educate them on the market, these days are well over.
Yeah.
Today, when I think of AI, you know, SEO has been a big thing. This is what we do at Sevacor, right? We continue studying the market and we help companies go to market as well. But SEO was the big thing, search engine optimization.
Yeah.
But today, if I want to find out what's the best, I don't know, what's the best SSD card? I don't go on Google really. I can just go on chat and I say, give me the best. So the question I'm asking businesses out there, if the engines don't know who you are, your customers being educated by them, your customers are being told by chat, by cloud, who's the best car, who's the best vehicle, who's the best dealership, who's that. If you're not doing this for your business, you're doing yourself a disservice. So the point I was trying to make is, sales guys today, you are not the source of knowledge. The knowledge is already there on the internet. The internet changed that. It made it available. ChatGPT is making it, and a cloud is making it even worse for you. So what's the value of the salesperson? When I bought my Suburban last year, I'd already done my research. I got 3 kids. I got 2 dogs. I had a car that can sit 7. You know what I mean? And I had all these criteria. When I showed up there, probably the salesperson who sold me the car thought, I must be some stud salesperson because that guy just walked in and I closed that deal. You did not. I closed myself before I showed up. You understand what I'm saying?
You did more research on that car than that salesman has ever done.
There you go. The point I'm trying to make now, though, is that a bad thing or a good thing? I think if we're smart business people, we do the education on those systems so that when people search for them, we come up, we pop up.
Right.
Just like you'd come up, right? I call it SEO and GEO. There's different name to call it. And that's what Sevacor, we focus a lot on doing. Like if you are in the tire business and you sell to dealership, if you search, you will probably see Sevacor's article. You will see stuff about how it comes up so that we want to educate the customer. To your point, you got to educate before you start selling, before your salesmen show up. And that's kind of like what we are focusing on. And I think AI is a very good example of those type of application. But man, I don't know. Some of the application I'm seeing, the promises being made, worries me, to be honest with you.
Yes, absolutely.
It worries me. Hey, Schiff, you ready? I learned something from you when I was at NADA. We talked about CarMax. You said, these were your words. You say, hey, we created CarMax, is what you said. You know, we created the independent store. And that stayed with me. You said the attitude the dealership had, and I wrote it down. It helped create the opening for these other businesses in another lane, or help push business to independence, for example, when tires concerned. Tell me a little more about that, because we didn't have a chance to discuss it. We were in the middle of an interview when you brought it up. I wanted to pick your brain more about it. When did you see that happen? I mean, these are like the founder of CarMax, for example, is I think he came from Radio Shack or I don't remember, but they were selling technical, electronic parts online type of thing, or at a store.
So I can you can go back in the LinkedIn archives. I do not remember how long ago it was, but I made a LinkedIn post that basically said that Carvana, those car vending machines, were built from the broken pieces of the dealerships.
Tell us more about it. I'm curious about that.
And that it's just absolutely the truth. We did not give customers an easier way to buy a car. Carvana saw an easier way to buy a car. They saw a gimmick in the vending machine that people thought was novel, right? And our idea of novel in the dealership world, and this is pushed down from the OEMs, is to do the next Gen 4, Gen 5 upgrade to the dealership with more glass in the showroom and, whatever it is, right? But we didn't do anything novel to change anything, and we didn't make it easier for a customer to buy a car. We certainly we're getting a little bit better about making it easier for them to service cars. You mentioned Richard Lupo a couple of times. He's got a mobile service business that's growing. We're starting to come around in the dealership world to making things easier for the customers. We have for a very long time basically said to customers, this is the way we do business, and you need to figure out how to work with us. And it should be the other way around, right? If Amazon came out and said, hey, we're gonna sell books, but you got to pick them up from us. We're gonna sell you everything that you use in your house, but you got to come pick it up from us, right? They wouldn't succeed. And that is because they made it easier for their customer to do business with them. And that's what we need. That's what we need to work on. We need to work on making it easier for the customer to do business with us. Give them a reason to want to do business with us. Don't tell your customers about the fact you got factory trained technicians and all that other stuff, right? There's some really, really good technicians out there in the independent world. There's some really, really good technicians in the dealership world. There's some bad ones in each of those worlds, right? They don't care about your factory-trained technicians. What they care about is ease of doing business to you. I don't care whether it's one of those electric Amazon vans that pulls up, one of the budget rental vans that I see pull up, or somebody who pulls up in their own car and is delivering the Amazon package that I ordered. I don't care. What I care is that I ordered it a day or 2 days ago, and it's now on my doorstep, and I didn't have to go anywhere to get it.
No, I think you make a very, very good point. This is what I don't understand, right? You also said about tires, right? That the dealership would just say, go down the street. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Back when I was an advisor, that's what we used to tell customers. We used to say, look, we're not going to give you as good a price as the tire store will. And if you ever have a problem with the tire, you have to go back to them to get the warranty on it anyways. Right? We didn't even handle the warranty claims on tires for customers. We used to tell them, you got to go to the Firestone store to get your Firestone tire warranted. So why would they buy a tire from us?
So, but the idea that you're going to lose a bunch of other revenue as a result of it never crossed mind, huh?
Didn't matter. We had customers. Here's the problem, Sandy. is sales. If you were at a store where they were selling a bunch of cars, those were new customers that were coming to you, new customers for you to churn in future years,
Wow.
right? But you had new customers that were coming to you. So it didn't matter if 50% of your customers didn't return, because you still had all those new cars being sold and they were going to come and do business with you. It may be only until they needed tires when you sent them down to the tire store and then they went away. But those 10 customers that went that way, there were 25 or 30 more that your sales department had sold some cars to.
So back in that time, margin was very, very generous and people were just chasing you guys. Now the game is changing.
Yeah.
It's very competitive.
Absolutely. It's very competitive now. The game has changed and the dealers largely have not.
I like that. So what's the advice here, Dave? What do they need to do? Regain the tire business, regain the used car from the CarMax. Tell me a little bit more about that. What's the strategy? What's the plan?
Yeah. So look, here's you asked about respect in this industry, and I told you I speak my mind. Here's something that I have spoken about that people do not necessarily agree with. In chasing higher warranty reimbursement rates from the OEMs, the process for doing that involves raising your customer pay rates and everybody around you raising their customer pay rates to be able to show the OEM that your market value is X and therefore they need to pay you more warranty dollars, right? So we keep raising that door rate that customers pay to get a better warranty rate, and we price ourselves out of the market. The Jiffy Lubes aren't doing that, and I'm not saying that Jiffy Lubes are cheap. It's not cheap to get your car serviced at a Jiffy Lube. It's still expensive, but they're not chasing the OEM warranty dollars like dealerships are.
You know, in my conversation with Richard, we had used that term called the institution, he calls it, right? I used the term the syndicate because I had just watched the Mission Impossible movie. It seems like there are these controlling bodies within the dealership that, lack of a better term, I hope nobody gets upset with that, but instead of promoting intellectual fortitude, it kind of like make us dumber in terms of the thing that we do, to be honest with you. I don't know. I mean, like this, when I was studying the tire business, I was like, how the heck are these people losing this? And why is it set up this way? Then when you dig a couple of layers deeper, it's because the business answer is the margin are shrinking, and many of those vendors need to find other ways how to continue collecting. Fixed Ops is the new shiny penny, the new kids on the block. So now let's start collecting on parts and collecting on tires and collecting on those type of things, right?
Yeah. Every couple of years, Fixed Ops is that new shiny penny.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah. Well, then sales turns around. Whenever sales is having a tough time, everybody's like, Fixed Ops, it's where you make your money. And then car sales come back and everybody goes, don't worry about Fixed Ops. They're always there. They always got customers, and they focus on sales again. And then something else happens in the economy, turns it around, and people start focusing on Fixed Ops again. So every couple of years is the year of Fixed Ops.
Yeah, but do you think that shrinking margin that's happening in the space with the OEMs, and do you think this is going to recover?
Yeah, I mean, Fixed Ops is not going anywhere.
Fixed Ops is good. I'm sorry. I mean, to me, when I was reading this FTC thing that was, taken away by the Fifth Circuit after a while, but I think there is some sort of scrutiny that's coming up, right? In terms of your fuzzy math. How about how you kind of like pad things and make things look and kind of like sometimes misguided. My thought was this: if business is not going to lose money, the profitability is going to shift from variable to fixed ops. And that's what I think. But if the government is going to start telling you can't do this, you can't do that, then there will be a lot of scrutiny is what I'm trying to say. I mean, do you feel that the industry will recover from those type of scrutiny that's happening right now?
What I know about dealers is they're pretty resilient, and they will figure out a way, and they will be okay, right? As long as the franchise model persists, and there's no indication that it is actually going to be broken. Yes, they're selling cars on Amazon, and there's these other things that are happening. There's the Tesla model of direct to consumer. Yes. There's some ways around some of it, but largely that franchise model is pretty ingrained in our economy and is probably not going anywhere. And as long as it isn't going anywhere, yes, they may plug a hole over here, but the dealers will find a way to get by. And I'm not saying they will find an illegal way to get by. They will find a way to replace the revenue that was lost on something that the government determined was not okay. And that may be through focusing more on fixed ops where there's a lot of missed opportunities. It may just be on the front side of the house on how commissions are calculated. Who knows how that happens? What I do know is I've been in the industry since 1987. I've gone through a lot of different ups and downs in this industry. They always pull through. They always find a way.
To quote the guy from Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
Exactly. So in Who Moved My Cheese, there's a line that says evolve or die.
Evolve or die.
And that is what will happen. The dealerships will continue to evolve. They are not going to die.
Yeah, you're right. Like my friend Lupus says, innovate or evaporate. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, same thing.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yes, sir.
What did you think? Did I bore you, or was it something you enjoyed? And tell me a little bit more. Anything
Good,
you
man.
want to add?
No, I love this. I love this. Do you know? I think it's TBPN. It's a podcast. Two guys. It's technology, business, something. I don't know what TPBN stands for. But anyways, so these two guys started this. They basically do and still do now a live show every day, 5 days a week.
Wow.
For 2 to 3 hours. And they bring in guests, whether it's virtual or sometimes in the studio, but it's not always just one. It's not just one guest. They'll bring somebody on, they talk to them for 20, 25 minutes, then they have another guest. So the reason I bring that up is these guys, OpenAI, just acquired them for a rumored somewhere between $100 and $200 million. This is an 18-month-old podcast, Sandy. I said to my son, I'm like, I would love to do that format. Just get on and go live. Been going live every single week since 2019 for an hour, right? I would love to do it for 2 or 3 hours, have a bunch of guests. I said, but logistically, that's a nightmare. I would have to have somebody who was scheduling the guests and bringing them into the studio and all that other stuff, right? Like I couldn't do that. But it's this type of format, right? Where they're just talking about what's going on and things.
Yeah,
I love this format rather than just the question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we move on. So I love this format, and I am not doing the go live for 3 hours. My son actually said to me, "I think you got enough going on to focus on without doing that."
Yeah, no, I agree with you that whole interview, kind of like, let me ask you a question and put the light in your face like you at the police station. I didn't think, to me, it's like I'm looking at it from an operator's perspective. I want to understand what are the similar things. Like next week, the podcast I'm having with JB Burnett, he had started around around sales in the dealership. So we will discuss, here's an enterprise sales guy who's going to talk to a dealership sales guy who's been very, very successful, right? He's done it very well. We had a prep call and I was telling him, hey, so tell me a little bit more about what you found out. And he was saying the old ways about what they would teach people to how to sell, the manipulative techniques, the things to do, to say, whatever. He said to me, Sandy, these things don't work. I said, when did you guys figure this out? We figured that out a long time ago. So I think this is going to be a fun conversation with JB and I. But JB sees the world he's very bright and personable guy. And I'm looking forward to my discussion with him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that'll be fun.